My interview with Holly Watt. Where were you born?
I was born in Scott County in a little two-room house about a mile above Twin Springs Schoolhouse in 1925.
What did your dad do for a living?
Well, my father was a farmer. Most of the people back in them days were farmers. They made their living. They didn't buy much out of the store, and they didn't have much money, and they had a little tobacco. When I was 8 or 10 years old, my daddy started raising tobacco, and we all worked on the farm. Kids had to do the chores. And we washed on a board, had to carry our water, but we cooked on a wood stove. But one year we lived in the house with my grandmother, and our lifestyle wasn't too much different from hers, other than she had cooked on a fireplace. They'd have two big fireplaces, and they'd cook on the fireplace. But we cooked on a wood stove, and we raised corn, and kids would have to work in the summertime, and kids would have to do the chores. And then at the nighttime, we didn't have no TVs or radios or anything, and so we'd all, after supper, sit around the fire and tell big old tall tales to entertain. And then everybody helped one another. People that have workings and help each other put up their crops. When we rented for several years, in our first home, they had a working and built it in about 2 days. Little 4-room house. Is that what you want me to tell you? Is that what you want to tell me, how we lived back then? And how, but everybody went to church on Sunday, because there wasn't no cars much. I remember the first car I ever rode in, my Uncle Frank had a car, and it looked a little bit like a buggy, with wheels on it. And they had to crank it to make it go. And the road was kind of like your road up towards your pond. Rough road, there'd be rocks and mud holes, and there wasn't no bridges across the creeks. And I remember riding the mile from Twin Springs to the top of the hill, and they had to stop twice where they'd stall down going over an old rock, and they'd have to get out and just crank, get it started back up. And mail boy come through. When I'd see that car coming, I'd get way over in the weeds because I thought it might run over me or something. And we walked everywhere we went. And on Sunday, everybody went to church. Behold, some people would ride a horse to church. My mother would ride a horse riding on a side saddle. And then on
What kind of games did you play?
well, our kids played. Kids didn't stay in the house too much. We played base. We run over hills. Sometimes when we go to school, we'd get back in late after school because we'd run for a mile or two to tag one another. And we'd play hide and seek. And we'd get out in the forest and cut in a big old oak tree and put 2 log chains together and make us a swing. Sometimes we'd cut a grapevine loose, make us a grapevine swing. And then we'd play dominoes and checkers, games like that when weather's bad and we couldn't get out to play. We'd play switch and London Bridge broke them down, but play in the playhouse. Now I was sort of a tomboy. I didn't I'd build a playhouse, but didn't play in it too much. And we'd get ready to make our mud pies, and we'd flip out eggs and put an egg in a mud pie, and then put it in can lids and things on top of a crib, so it'd bake and look real pretty, like it's a pie.
What kind of subjects did you have in school?
Well, we had mainly was the basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic. We had mostly, and spelling, some geography. But mostly was reading and writing and arithmetic. And we had some history, Virginia history. And we didn't have a lot of subjects like you have today. We just had kind of basics. And most of our books taught morals and principles. And well,
How did y'all get your clothes back then?
well, my mother sewed mostly. We didn't have many ready-made clothes. And she'd order ringlets and patterns and make her clothes. And a lot of them was made out of just dairy feed sacks or chicken feed sacks, where we'd buy feed to feed the chickens and the cows, and we'd get 2 or 3 alike and make her clothes out of that. But we dressed, because we were outside a lot, and we dressed in warm clothes. We'd wear cotton stock and long sleeves in her dresses, and we wore good warm clothes. And we didn't have too many. We'd wear one dress maybe a week. We'd have about 3 outfits when we was going to school, so we could always keep one clean. But everybody had about the same. Everybody in the neighborhood dressed just about alike. And the grandmas and the elderly people wore long dresses, and they'd be dark colors, and they'd wear an apron and a bonnet. But my mother dressed a whole lot like we do today. But they dress up. They dress up on Sunday. Everybody dressed up. And everybody'd have some pretty neat Sunday clothes. Because we went to church, they wore their best. And the men would wear hats and bow ties. And they'd all spruce up on Sundays. And then when you got back home, you'd have to pull them off and hang them up and take care of them. Put on your old clothes. We had to do the same way when we went to school. We had to change our clothes when we first got in, so we could do up our chores.
How did y'all get your food back then?
Get what?
How did you all get your food back then?
It's food. Well, we didn't buy much. We raised chickens and took eggs to the store, and sometimes we'd take frying-sized chicken or maybe an old hen and sell it at the store. But the biggest thing we bought at the store would be coffee and sugar. Not too much sugar, because we raised molasses, raised cane made molasses. But we'd buy sugar and sodium, baking powder, salt. Sometime in the fall of the year, we got low on meat, we'd buy a piece of fat back, and they'd always wrap it up with a piece of paper and tie a string around it. Everything we'd get would be wrapped up in paper. They didn't have boxes and bagged up like they do now. We worked for something to eat. We eat real healthy. We canned and raised gardens. That was the main thing we did year-round, was work toward putting up stuff to eat for winter. We had an orchard, and we'd gather in a lot of apples. We'd raise popcorn and pop the popcorn over the fireplace. We had molasses. We'd make popcorn balls and taffy. That's what we did for a party. We'd have a taffy full of them, make popcorn balls. And we had chickens and got our own eggs. We canned a lot of can. We dry a lot of stuff. They build a big kiln. Dry apples, dry corn, shuck beans. And us kids sit around the needle and string up the beans. And everybody picked blackberries in the summertime. There wasn't as many bugs and beetles things back in to bother our beans, and we didn't have to spray them like you do now. And we put we eat 3 meals a day, and we'd start early in the morning getting dinner, and the women and kids would work at the house while the men was out in the field. And in the evening you'd wash up your dishes and rest a little while and start back in getting supper. And we milked the cows and had our own milk and carried it to the spring house. We'd churn every day so we'd have fresh butter and buttermilk. We didn't have a spring house most of the time. We had a dairy. We'd have to carry everything down in the dairy. Didn't have no refrigerator. Carry it down in the dairy and keep it from dinner till supper and carry it back out. And just supper. But we ate good. I like to have some of the good old pickle beans and trout and stuff we had back then now. Instead of junk that we get out the store, wouldn't you?
This concludes my interview.
Thank you.
Thank you.